Hi, I'm Ho Patrick, and this is Group 2's Wiki project on cybercrime. So my contribution to the homepage was basically just organizing our layout. So we started off with talking about what all topics were going to be talked about in this entire web page. And then we just basically defined what cybercrime was in this area right here. My next contribution was my other pages, but first I'm going to kind of cover the other pages that everybody else did. So the first page after the home page was Brandon's page on espionage. After reading all his research, I did learn that espionage happens more often than anybody likes to admit, and it's mostly in our government and within our military. So this is how he laid out his web page, kind of just talking about examples and how it is in the news for this first one. His second page was kind of just prevention and how to prevent espionage from happening. The third page after the home page is on identity theft, and that was done by Tristan. He kind of covered how you can be affected by child identity theft at a young age, but you can also be faced with tax identity theft and medical identity theft as you're older. This is the rest of his page. And then Tristan's second one kind of focused on how it occurs and how they actually steal your identity. And it's kind of scary to think of all the different ways they can steal your identity, especially with the increase of technology. The next one was on malvertising, which is done by Alexis. So malvertising is basically malicious advertising, and she did a good job at organizing that. This was her webpage. And they basically trick you into downloading software that corrupts your computer. So her first one was on what is malvertising, and then her second one was kind of like how to prevent malvertising. And I also found it very interesting because, again, with children using technology, they get really curious on links. So when they click links, they then corrupt your computer with malicious software. So then these next two were my pages that I created, and it was really interesting to kind of cover cyber scams, which is the topic that I covered. There are many books written about scams, and like I said earlier, with the rise in technology, scams are really hitting hard with just personal use in email and phone calls and social media. So I decided to cover like kind of what cyber scams were, and then easy ways you can spot them. So just greetings will be very generic, and usually they will not use your name or any personal information at all. They'll just be very bland and generic. They'll be contacting you from an organization that's not real. So if you just type in their organization name and nothing comes up, that gives you kind of suspicious feeling to not trust them. And they'll have very poor grammar and spelling if they're contacting you through the internet or through email or something along those lines. But if they're calling you, they're going to have very poor speaking presentation skills. So they're not going to know how to really be persuasive. They're going to be very confrontational, very assertive, rude, and persistent on trying to get you to do what they want you to do. And sometimes they will also sound very over-professional because they want you to be convinced with what they want you to do. I also covered how to protect yourself from scams, and really it's just common knowledge. Never send money to people you don't know. Don't open suspicious text messages, pop-up windows, or emails. Shred all your personal information instead of just throwing it in the trash can or even burn it. And then always use password protection on all electronic devices, because then it's one more step of protection so they can't steal your personal information. And always update your privacy and security settings on all social media, just so you know personally that everything is safe. And then this video at the bottom basically just covers what happens to you when you actually reply to a spam email and the process that it takes for them to steal your information. My next page was just the different types of scams that there are, which there are many more than I covered, but just a few of them are ransomware, when it completely freezes all your files on your computer and then they blackmail you for your files back. Student employment scams is basically false employment. They hire you, quote unquote, and then you have to send them a check to start your job for like a training or something like that, and they never actually hire you, they just take your money. Data breach extortion is where they compromise all your personal files on your computer and then blackmail you by threatening to share that information over social media. And then I also added a little bit of like tips to prevent yourself from that specific scam. And then if you are the victim of a scam, I added in here who you should contact to report those scams and what you should do. A number one thing you should do if you feel like you're being scammed is always ask for a phone number to call them back. It also gives you time to research that company or organization, but far from that, if it is a scam, they're not going to want to give you a callback number. I also added a section on the future of scams because, again, like I said earlier, with the increase of technology, computerized cars and vehicles are now being compromised. There's been no cases towards this yet, but it is also a concern that the FBI is having right now. Helena covered cyber stalking. She started off just by talking about what it was, and then on her next page she went on to talk about just some facts. Some facts and just ways to prevent it. This is also why you should always have your privacy settings to private. It prevents cyber stalking. The last pages were done by Timothy. He did the dark web. His first one was on what the dark web is, which is this page right here. And then his last page was more about the dark web. And kind of briefly covering cybercrime and the crimes that take place within the dark web and how they use the dark web for illegal material. And then our very last page is our reference page by Tim also. And he organized this by the homepage and then each individual section that everybody did. And all the videos also. So thank you for watching my screencast on cybercrime and all of our contributions to this wiki project.